The landscape of college football has changed drastically in the last 20 years, from play styles to techniques to play calling to uniforms to the way that players themselves are recruited to their university. We all remember the fact of the prospective team arranging for the equipment truck to arrive at the recruit's home so they can see the uniforms and the rings and everything, or about the emergence of recruits going on visits to campus and getting to try on the team's uniforms in the locker room. Honestly, that was my least favorite. But there is a treatment that is so rare that it's preserved for the most elite of all recruits, the middle school offer. So let's rewind just a bit. I said that the middle school offer is reserved for the most elite of all recruits, but is it? Today we're going to take a look at players who wowed coaches so early in their careers that they had college scholarship offers before they had a driver's permit. How did their careers fare, and was it worth offering them a scholarship before they even played a down of high school football? One of the most famous instances of a player being offered a scholarship in middle school is David Sills. Sills was just 13 years old in 2010 when Lane Kiffin saw a highlight video of what he thought was a high school sophomore or junior. When he was told that David was only 13, he couldn't believe it. He called Sills later that day and offered him a scholarship to USC. By the time David Sills was in high school, Lane Kiffin was fired and Steve Sarkisian informed the quarterback that he was not what USC was looking for. Sills did end up signing with West Virginia. However, the only action he saw was as a receiver when the Mountaineers were short at the position. David showed some promise at the position, but he was determined to make it as a quarterback, so he went the JUCO route. At the end of his only season at El Camino Community College, Sills was on his way back to Morgantown. It was here that Dana Holgorsen had to sit him down and let him know that unless David's mechanics were as perfect as Dana wanted, he would not play QB for him. So, David moved to receiver permanently, and boy, that was a great decision. Not just because it got him on the field, but because he absolutely thrived. He led the nation with 18 TDs his first year back, and the next year, he led the Big 12 with 15 touchdowns. He went undrafted and has spent time with the Bills and currently the Giants. Offering middle schoolers isn't just reserved for the zaniness of Lane Kiffin. In 2012, Les Miles offered a 7th grader. A year later, Nick Saban offered the same player when he was in the 8th grade. That player was Dillon Moses. Moses was already 6 foot tall and 180 pounds when Miles extended his offer. By the time Saban's came, he had grown to 205 pounds in the 8th grade. He originally committed to LSU before decommitting and signing with Alabama as a 5-star linebacker. He was able to record 30 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, 1.5 sack, and 1 interception in 8 games as a freshman. The next year he registered 86 tackles, 10 for a loss, and 3.5 sacks. He lost his junior season due to injury, but returned to the Crimson Tide for his senior season in 2020, where he had 76 tackles, a single sack, and a pick in 12 games. This garnered him first-team All-ACC honors. Add that to his 2018 awards of second-team slots on both the All-ACC and All-American squads. Moses was a big contributor to the Tide during his tenure and helped them bring home 2 national championships in his 3 seasons played. He was recently signed by the Jaguars as an undrafted free agent. Next up, we have Rashan Gary. Gary was also 13 when he received a scholarship offer from in-state Rutgers. Gary would go on to become the overall #1 recruit in the nation. Sorry, Rutgers. Which meant he would not be staying in New Jersey. He had 13.5 sacks his senior year of high school, en route to garnering the USA Defensive Player of the Year award, as well as USA Today All-American honors. Gary ultimately signed with Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines in what was a major piece in the rebuilding of the program for Coach Harbaugh. As a true freshman, Gary totaled 5 tackles for a loss and a half a sack, seeing action in 12 games. He started to flash his dominance as a sophomore when he had 11.5 tackle for loss and 5.5 sacks. Many predicted that Rashan would have an absolutely monstrous year in 2018, but injuries limited him to only 9 games, but he still recorded 6.5 tackles for loss and 3.5 sacks. Gary was voted All Big Ten in both 2017 and 2018 and declared for the draft after his junior year. He was selected by the Green Bay Packers with the 12th overall pick in the 2019 draft. That is the highest by anyone on this list. Gary had 2 sacks in his rookie year, but turned it on in his second season in 2020, totaling 6.5 through both the regular and postseason. He figures to be a factor for the Packers defense going forward as long as he can continue to improve. Our next entry is actually a combination of 3 quarterbacks who are still playing in the college ranks. When Max Johnson was in 8th grade, he received his very first college scholarship from the University of Miami. The coach at the time, Mark Richt, just happened to be Johnson's uncle, and Johnson's dad just so happened to be former Pro Bowler and Super Bowl winner Brad Johnson, so things were looking up for the young man. Johnson actually ended up committing to LSU and Ed Ogeron. His first year on campus, he was the 3rd stringer, but 2020 being the season it was, Johnson found himself with the opportunity to start against the 6th-ranked Florida Gators late in the season. In a wild game that was full of fog and, honestly, hilarity, Johnson completed 58% of his passes and scored 3 times through the air and didn't commit a single turnover. He, along with the ill-fated Cleat Eat, helped the downtrodden Tigers knock off the Gators and essentially knock them out of playoff contention. His next game against Ole Miss, he completed 53% of his passes and again threw 3 touchdowns along with his first interception. However, Johnson showed another wrinkle to his game as he ran in an extra 2 touchdowns and helped lead the Tigers to a 53-48 shootout victory. With these 2 strong showings to close out the season, it seems that Max Johnson is a leading candidate to win the LSU starting position for 2021, but it's going to be a tough battle with Miles Brennan and TJ Finley also fighting for the spot. Earlier in the same week that Miami offered Max Johnson, they offered another middle school signal caller, quarterback Harrison Bailey, who ironically is also from Georgia. Bailey's prep career culminated with a senior season where he passed for 4,674 yards, 50 touchdowns, and 10 picks. He earned a 4-star ranking, was the number 3 pro-style quarterback prospect in the country, and had offers from the likes of Alabama, Auburn, and Florida. So where did he end up? He committed to Jeremy Pruitt and the University of Tennessee. Bailey saw action in 6 games his first year with the Vols and started 3. He flashed his potential and his arm strength at times, but also showed that there were a lot of improvements to be made. Overall, Bailey finished the season with 578 yards, 4 TDs, and 2 picks. He figures to be a major player in the battle for the Tennessee quarterback position going into 2021 with new coach Josh Heupel. And the last quarterback on this list is the infamous Tate Martell. Martell garnered a scholarship offer from Steve Sarkisian when he was with Washington back in 2012, when Tate was just 13 years old. Martell actually gave a verbal commitment to the Huskies before he even had his first day of classes in the 8th grade. At Bishop Gorman High School, Martell would compile 113 touchdowns and 9 interceptions in just 3 seasons played. In his senior season, he threw for 41 touchdowns, a single pick, and an additional 21 TDs on the ground. He fully earned the hype as one of the highest regarded recruits in his class. This seemed to validate the offer he received back in middle school, but he did decommit from Washington and opened up his recruiting in high school. He eventually committed to Ohio State and looked poised to become the next great Buckeye quarterback. In his redshirt freshman season, Tate saw cleanup action and recorded 1 passing touchdown while completing 82% of his throws for 269 yards. He also rushed for 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the transfer portal started to become a thing, and Justin Fields made the leap from Georgia to Ohio State. Martell was confident in his ability to be out Fields for the job, but when the dust settled, it was Fields who was going to start. Martell entered the portal himself and wound up at Miami. When he was once again beat out for the starting spot, he switched positions to wide receiver. Martell saw very little playing time and actually didn't record a single reception as a receiver. He opted out of the 2020 season, so we'll have to wait until 2021 to see if his game, or more likely his attitude, has improved enough to get him on the field and receive targets. Given their high school careers and the sheer media attention that Tate Martell received as a middle and high schooler, who would have guessed that he would be the one with the least impressive college stats? I understand that the other 2 QBs got a chance to start multiple games, but even at Miami, where he had a clean slate and a good opportunity to win the starting job, he just couldn't get it done. The last 2 players I want to touch on are more recent additions to this exclusive club, Enzo Jennings and Justin Rogers. Jennings got a scholarship offer from Kentucky when he was still in the 8th grade. There seems to be a trend here. As a high schooler, Jennings posted 7 interceptions, 4 fumble recoveries, and 20 pass breakups. He earned a 4-star ranking and committed to Penn State. In 2020, he played in the season finale at Illinois but didn't record any stats. Justin Rogers? Well, he was a late bloomer when it came to football. He was a giant of a kid, but he was always told that he needed to play easier with the kids on the block because of his size. Once he realized that he needed to be aggressive on the field in order to succeed, that's exactly what he did. Between his 7th and 8th grade seasons, he joined some friends on a trip to a camp in Kentucky. That is when he was noticed by coaches and actually received his first offer from the Wildcats. At the time, he was the youngest player to receive an SEC offer. By the time he was a senior, he was the #1 recruit from the state of Michigan, and he actually played both offensive and defensive tackle. On the offensive side of the ball, he gave up 0 sacks his senior year, while tallying 6 on the defensive side and forced 3 fumbles. He said he felt an instant connection with Coach Stoops, and that's why he decided to commit to Kentucky. His freshman year with the Wildcats, he saw action in 7 games and total 9 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. Each of these 2 up-and-comers have breakout potential in just their sophomore years. They may not be national names by the year's end, but they will definitely be talked about more as their playing time increases. So for the players who have wrapped up their college careers, I thought Rashan Gary had the best collegiate career, with Dillon Moses and David Stills a close 2A, 2B. For the guys still in school, I think Max Johnson is showing a lot of potential, and I think Justin Rogers will turn some heads in the next year or 2. Harrison Bailey still has plenty of time to show what he can do, but Johnson just had the superior first year. So the question remains, is it beneficial to offer middle school football player? I think that it is. From the school's perspective, they can show the kid that they recognize their talents, and they might even preserve the ability in the future to keep reminding the kid, hey, well, we offered you middle school before anybody else did. And if the kid grows into an outstanding recruit, then that might just be the edge that that first school needs to get him to commit. And if, for some reason, the player doesn't pan out, then, as scummy as it may sound, the school can just back out and retract their offer. So really, nothing is lost from the school. For the players, I think it can give them a confidence boost and give them something a little more to play for. Not only to try to keep this scholarship offer from the current school and let them know they didn't waste an offer, but to turn heads for other schools and let them know the hype was worth it. Of course, it could backfire, and the player could just maybe take it a little easy knowing that he has a scholarship offer before he even played a single down of high school football. Altogether, while it is a bit strange to see it, I think that offering high school football players should remain a rare occurrence because it isn't completely detrimental to college football, but I don't think it should become the norm either. I'm interested to see how these players develop and see who the next savant is who might receive a scholarship offer before they know how to drop.